We are very glad to restart this discussion, and we have started the morning very high. We have listened to inspirational speakers and to visions of the future, but also of the present. And now, in the second part of the morning, we'd like to go a bit deeper into the how. So this is a little bit what we are looking at. And we have a fantastic panel here with us today. 4 key players of digital government in Europe. We have Luukas Ilves, who is now Chief Information Officer of Estonia. We have Frank Leyman, Head of International Relations in BOSA, the Belgian agency for innovation and promotion of innovative services. We have Idoia Ortiz, who is Head of Gobe Studio, who is basically a key player in the GovTech arena, not just in Spain. And we have Mark Boris Andrijanič, who is former Minister of Slovenia. He has had a fantastic role to play, not just in Slovenia, but in Europe during the Slovenian presidency. So, you know, who better could we ask the question? And the question is basically, we have heard some very clear message about where we have to go. And we know, you know, as they used to say, the future is here. Is just unevenly distributed. And it's unevenly distributed actually among these people also. So each of you has a little bit of the future. So let's start with Luukas. Luukas, obviously Estonia, you know, everyone knows, the home of interoperability, but not only interoperability. And how do you see, what's your vision? What are the challenges ahead? And how do you see what's next when it comes to achieving the vision that we have heard this morning?
Thank you. So, you know, I keep on coming back to what the fundamental challenge for government doing digital is compared to the private sector, which is that we don't compete over our customers. If you are today a bank or a telco or some very boring legacy business that provides a poor user experience, that below all of that doesn't use its data, has a poor tech stack, you will lose your customers, as surely as you will lose your customers if you have too high fees or a poor interest rate as a bank. On the other hand, for the most part, governments don't compete for their customers. So the question is, how do we learn the lessons that the rest of the world has learned in the last decade or two about how digital transforms business in the way of doing things in its absence? And I think there are 2 elements. Part of it, if we talk about GovTech as a concept, is how government itself becomes more like tech companies, and this is something that Mikhailo just talked about. And the other half is how we also bring the private sector into public functions and the work of government, so that in some places we have a competitive element, we have that user centricity through, you know, parties that are good at that, whose main job that is. And I want to touch on how we're doing both. So the first bit, how does government get better at tech itself? Well, Estonia's been doing digital government so long that we have a legacy problem. And, you know, we've kind of become, you know, not as slow and bureaucratic as some countries in Europe, but we're no longer, you know, as innovative or certainly as fast-moving as we spontaneously were in the 2000s, you know? You accumulate layers. And so that means we think we have a lot to teach others, but we also have something to learn from others. And I want to, you know, in that context, talk about Ukraine for a second. You know, part of the story of the transformation that Mikhailo talked about is that they looked a lot at what we'd done in Estonia, and they copied some elements, but I would say in many ways they copied it better. And of course, they implemented things that we had done in 2005 and 2010 in 2020, and they did it in the smartphone. You saw the story. And so as we've been thinking about how we move in the same direction, we thought, why reinvent the wheel? You know, we talk a lot about sharing and reuse. The easy part is to share what you've done, to make your code available. The hard part is to implement something that someone else has created in your systems as government, how to overcome that not invented here syndrome yourself. And so to put our money where our mouth is, we are launching this year the Estonian government app, M-Riik, which is to say M-Government, which is based on DIA, which is based on the libraries and the code of DIA, and which will start off with some of the same functionalities that Mikhailo showed you. So dematerialized documents that integrates our existing electronic identity systems, that has the beta version of our government AI, which we still think is and is going to remain the best government AI in the world. I look forward to having friendly competition with all of you around that, and into which we will, over the next months and years, port all of our 2,000 existing digital services, and then leverage what mobile platforms let you do to do new and exciting things. And the point is, we are moving faster and can do more in reusing what Ukraine has done than we could doing so on our own. And I think our vision is that, is that apps like Dia can become things that governments collaborate on developing. So interoperability is more than just having interconnection and standards. It also can mean using the same technology and the same platforms. So speaking of technology and platforms, a word I'm sure you've heard, Estonians talk about until, this community has heard us talk about till the end of times, X-Road. I'm not going to give you another lecture on X-Road. But there's a point I want to make about X-Road, which is it's not a government platform. It's not just a platform for public services. In Estonia, of the 1,100 entities that are connected to X-Road and exchange data there, more than half are private sector entities. And many of them exchange data with the public sector, so it's banks doing AML queries, but a lot of it is also private sector to private sector, B2B. And so one of the things that we all need to be thinking about is how B2G and B2B setups work, what the technical infrastructure is, and how we build businesses on top of that. And of course, and the G element, sometimes it's government agencies, but sometimes also government enabling individuals to share their data in new ways. So I know the Lisbon Council has done a lot of work on the data economy, on personal data, how to share and reuse it. Hint, I actually did some of that work when I worked with them, and David and I did a great paper on that a few years ago. So something that we've finally gotten to now in practice is deploying a consent model in our e-government infrastructure that allows individuals to share their personal data with private companies based on consent. We have a few pilots going right now. When I applied for a home loan last year, I automatically sent my tax data to the bank. I didn't have to upload income statements, et cetera. But as we look at the societal challenges we have for the next decade, how we combine our healthcare, our health data and our genetic data to have the next generation of healthcare and extend our lifespans, how we combine all the sort of, everything from IoT data to behavioral data to nudge us all into green behavior, how we build the skills of the future with new forms of education, all while our bureaucracies are graying. I mean, the problem we have in Estonia, it's not that we have too many civil servants, it's that we have too few to do all the things we have to do. And many of our civil servants, our teachers, our nurses, our doctors are in their 50s and their 60s and retiring soon. We're going to need to have automation. We need to use AI. We don't see AI as a threat. We see it as the only way we're going to survive. And to do all of that, we can't do it as government on our own. We have to bring in private companies. We have to find ways that the data that underlies all of this can move between parties in a way that's ethical, that's controlled, that's well-governed. And this is sort of the type of platform that we're building in Estonia. It's a type of platform which I hope we don't build uniquely, but where we are, building that based on standards and tools that everyone's deployed. And I think those two things together is where GovTech's going to go. It's governments itself behaving more like tech companies, but it's also knowing when to get out of the way, when to be a platform provider, build the ecosystem, and then bring in tech companies to do the risky and the tough innovation. And with that, I hand over to Frank.
Thanks. Thanks a lot. And I can see that now we have to also admire Estonia for being a reuser, leading the reuse. And I think it's actually something that's in the paper that we published today. We propose an award not for the best solution, for the solution which is most reused, but for those who actually reuse it. This is who we have to celebrate, the people who dare to say, these other administration did it better, and I want to learn from this. And it takes really courage.
Are you taking nominations?
Yes, I think.
No, but I want to nominate Ukraine, actually, because they've gotten where they have because of reuse.
Yes, the X-Road. Anyway, Frank, I also have a special request for you. I mean, we're talking about interoperability and the complexity of building interoperable services at European level. And Belgium is a special case, not just because we are in Brussels, but because of the complexity of your national environment. And you managed to do great things in interoperability, not despite of, but because of this, because of the need to bring everyone on board and to create agreements, to create protocols, standards, data models. So what is your view of the future in Europe?
Yeah, it's true. Interoperability for us is our daily life. We have to interoperate between federal level, regional level, communities, etc. So we are used to work in that kind of a concept. So extending that to a European level for us is like just continuing the way we are doing. Interoperating for us is also, and now I'm going to make a link to what Luukas just said, is also non-technically talk to each other, learn from each other, copy from each other. I have no problem. I think as public sector, we should copy from each other when a solution is good. So I will also look at the Ukrainian solution for things we can take over and do probably, hopefully better. With regards to interoperability in general and this topic here, I think we need to be very well aware of where we are in the journey on, well, digitalizing our society, basically, yeah. When President Barroso, I think he launched the idea of creating the European single market, between brackets, the European digital single market. I think we all started digitalizing our services and making them interoperable. We are at the last stretch of that, yeah. Every country is 90+% digitalized. We need to get these last percentages on board, and then we will be in a de facto full digital society. Now, how do we get there? Well, interoperability is one of the elements there that we also need to tackle. We've had 2 years of COVID, which actually was a blessing on digitalization, yeah. I can give you 2 figures for Belgium. Digital authentication did ×8, yeah. We are now at 300 million authentications. Transactions in our back office went ×4, but we are at 1.2 billion transactions on annual basis. That's enormous. That means that the thing is, well, what we built works and seems to be useful. So we need to continue working on that. There are also observations I have. We see that apparently a mobile is becoming the standard that citizens want to use, and we are merging towards that. The e-wallet discussions we are having and we are implementing, we are also doing a wallet like Luukas just mentioned. These are all interoperable, and they must be interoperable. There are also consequences. Yeah, we need, as a department that is taking care of digital transformation, we need to be much more and continuously, we need to anticipate on the needs of these customers. And that cycle is quicker and quicker. And at the same time, we have new technologies we need to understand, we need to digest, and we need to see whether we can use them in a useful way. As Belgium, we are too small to do that on our own, and it makes so sense that every European country does it on its own. So projects like Digital Gov for All, I mean, this is a no-brainer. We need to work together and build something together. In practice, we also need to work on things we are not yet, or we have not yet reached. For instance, we need to be much more human-centric, citizen-centric. I think we can do some more effort there. We need to work on simplification. Technology is already very difficult for the average citizen. So it's up to us to hide the digital complexity and to make sure that there is a service there that is easy acceptable, that is trustworthy, and that people can use. By the way, we have integrated the administrative simplification agency into our department just because of the fact that whatever we build must be compliant with simplification. And then, of course, we need to innovate. And then the projects I just mentioned are very good examples for that. Now, we also have some challenges to tackle if I look now at the future. Challenges like digital skills, unleashing data, cybersecurity, and inclusion, just to name a few of them. If you look at digital skills, actually there was a recent report of the World Economic Forum who has defined what are the 5 skills that children will have to acquire to be ready for the future. And I'm going to mention them because they are very significant to what we need to do in the future. Besides digital skills, which is one of them, of course, they said they need to acquire skills around creativity. They need to be much more creative. They need to be much more collaborative, learn how to work together. They need to have a better understanding of world citizenship. And finally, they need to be aware and manage environmental aspects, the footprint. I very much like these 5 skills, but because that's tell us also what we need to do. With regards to unleashing data, I think, okay, also there's so many data that is there that is exploitable, up to us to put them available in a certain way, so that it can create a data economy. With regards to cybersecurity, I very much liked the announcement of Commissioner Breton about his cybersecurity dome. It's also an example where we need to work together. Yeah, it makes no sense that we each make our domes. Yeah, let's put all our effort together into one big dome. And then finally, something on inclusion. Belgium is considered to be a modern state, but still we have a problem of inclusion. A bit over 2% of Belgians have no access to internet. Around 7% of the Belgians may have access to internet but don't use it. 27% of elderly say that they use it very rarely. And 39% of internet users say that they don't have enough skills to feel at ease online, let's say. Also, that means that if we want to reach the 100% full digital, we need to take care of these people. That's probably a lot of education, maybe some financial incentives, etc. But we need to work on that because they need to be part of society.
Thanks a lot. And also in the report published today, and one of the competitors for the finalists for the award today is Ghent, with the proactive services that automatically register people without having to do anything, especially for people who don't have access to internet or have problems using compiling forms and so on. So it's really one example where Belgium is already doing something. Now let's turn 180 degrees, metaphorically. We have heard from government and how to deliver the vision. Now Idoia is here the spokesperson of startups. She works with startup working with government. And obviously you have a different perspective. How do you see this happening when it comes of the startup? Do you see this as a reality? What are the bottlenecks to make this happen?
Oh, thank you so much. Not so different view, I have to say. But yes, I mean, so what I'm gonna try to share with you today is my experience, is my work, I mean, my experience trying to bring together startups, scale-ups, and public institutions, okay? So this journey I started like 6-7 years ago. While I was at MIT, actually, I found this space, this GovTech space. Then I have been working, promoting these ecosystems from a university in Spain, in Madrid University, and now from Gobe, that it's a GovTech innovation studio that I founded 2 years ago. We are doing the same, right? So we've been working these years with more or less 30 institutions and around 200 startups, okay? Bringing them together, identifying public challenges and putting them to work together. So I think that this on-the-ground experience can give a lot of insights and information about to this debate. So what I would like to do today is to explain what we understand about GovTech and why it's important for the European agenda. Which are the most important barriers, and I think that you both have talked about these barriers earlier in the conversation. And second, what can we overcome these barriers? So at least how we can start thinking about overcoming these barriers. So what is GovTech? And I know that there are a lot of definitions about this, how we work GovTech. It's about bringing together these startups, this new ecosystem of startups, scale-ups, small, medium enterprises that using data and technology are giving solutions to these big public sector challenges. So the philosophy behind this is that there is too much innovation already in the market, that it has traction, it's impacting, this innovation is impacting other industries, and that could have a lot of impact also working with governments, but because of the barriers that we have with governments, this is not happening. So, and those barriers are not, by the way, spoiler, not just procurement. and you talked about that before as well. So we see a huge opportunity here. First, because GovTech is an opportunity to introduce and integrate that creativity and innovation that we see in the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Europe. So we are not talking about the innovation of private sector. We are talking about the entrepreneurial ecosystem. I mean, we are talking about startups and scale-ups and the creativity of these kind of businesses. Second, because we think that this is a great opportunity for boosting that competitive advantage of the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Europe. At the end of the day, 15–20% of our GDP of our member countries are coming from the public procurement. If we could open or channel a piece, even a fraction of that money to startups and scale-ups in our ecosystem of our countries, I mean, the impact could be huge. So, of course, there's a lot of opportunities here, but it's very difficult to materialize this GovTech idea. And I see three main questions or barriers here. The first one is about, well, I would say that governments don't know how to find and buy technological innovation. And I'm gonna stress this idea. We are talking, I mean, governments know how to buy technology. They buy technology a lot every year. But when we are talking about innovation, technology is something different. And when I'm talking about innovation, technological innovation, it's not about new inventions or research and development. We are talking about, as I said before, innovation that is already in the market, that it's working in other industries, that it's working out there with the private sector in education, health, and so on, and can be bring it to governments. So when we are talking about this, we are not talking about innovation procurement, because always when we talk about the startups, the scale-ups, and government, someone thought innovation procurement. No, this is about opening the commercial procurement, and we have a lot to do in this regard. Second thing is that what we see is that governments are obsessed in tailor-made solutions. So if we are talking here about trying to support the scale up, the scaling up these kind of solutions, I mean, it's very difficult if you don't have these standards or these standardized technological requirements. So, for instance, an example, just to make you an idea, I mean, you have a lot of municipalities, and many of these municipalities in Europe have the same services, but totally different technological requirements. Imagine if we can standardize all that. I mean, today, a startup can't sell its product, the same product, in France, in Spain, or in Germany. This is a single European market. It's not yet. So again, we have to work on this. And the third thing, and again, going back to Luukas, for me is that the worst barrier here. And it depends the country, and I know it. And we can see some countries in Europe that are doing very well, others that don't. But there is a hollowing out of digital capacities in governments. What I'm talking about is about outsourcing. So in many countries, in many institutions, everything, talking about digital, everything is outsourced. So the government is reactive. They don't have time for strategic thinking. They depend too much, even in the core and central policies and services. They depend too much in outsiders and vendors. So working with the startups that, again, are about, they are giving you innovation, but innovation in products, functionalities that you have to be able to integrate in your service. I mean, if you don't have those teams, like strong and very well-prepared teams that are able to define well the problems, to evaluate, experiment, and really understand what they need from the market, I mean, the GovTech market is not gonna work. I mean, so it's very important for us that we are promoting this GovTech market and this relation with the startup scale-ups to have a super sophisticated client in the public sector. And it has to happen, because if, again, this is not gonna work. So about the ideas to change all the barriers, I mean, this is, as you know, it's not difficult, it's not easy, sorry. But again, the first thing, European institutions, be aware of the potential of working with GovTech and this idea of boosting this idea of startups, scale-ups, and the relation with governments. Second thing, as we said, opening the commercial procurement. Innovation procurement is okay, but we have to have a much more diverse innovative procurement market, and we don't have it yet. Third, standardization, super important. And fourth, as I said, taking into account that this work with the startup scale-ups is not another outsourced model. Not a way. I mean, this is about collaboration. This is about controlling the core, creating these platforms, so you can create more value with others outside, in this case, startups and scale-ups. So in a positive note, just to say, I know that this is complicated. I know, but I'm sure that people here is gonna think like, this is crazy, but we have seen what happened with Ukraine. And why? Because they had this urgent matter. But I really think that we have an urgent matter here in Europe as well. So just to say that, I mean, if you are open to this idea of GovTech, I think that there are many institutions that are already working on this agenda in Europe. GovTech for All is an amazing opportunity to share, to understand, and super looking forward to follow this conversation with any of you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, and I really hope we can find I hope we can find the ways to convince government to reuse and to adapt and to standardize requirements in GovTech for All, because this is part of the work that we will be doing. Mark Boris, last but before I go to you, next I go to you. So prepare for question and answers after the intervention for Mark Boris. And Mark Boris, you have a very special perspective from the private and the public sector, the presidency, the Slovenia, coming into the new government and changing from the inside. What's your view on all this?
Oof, where to start? First of all, I would like to congratulate you, David, Paul, and everyone else at the Lisbon Council for bringing us all together. I think this is a magnificent and much needed platform. I must say that when I was a minister, one of the things that I struggled with is what should we do and how should we do it? And we realized that we had very little clue about what our neighboring countries are doing in the area of GovTech, let alone places like Belgium, Estonia, Spain, and so on. So this kind of exchange of best practices at the national as well as local level, I think is hugely needed across the board. Now, if I can just add to what you've said just now, sometimes when you're trying to change things, you realize that your most powerful opposition doesn't sit in the parliament, but in your own bureaucracy. So it's really important to bring everyone on board, because changing things is not just great for everyone, it's also painful for some people who are used to doing things the same way they've been doing them for years and sometimes decades. Now, I would say that Ukraine's example is just fantastic. I've been following Ukraine's digital transformation from the start, and I must say that what these guys have managed to do in the time of war, most of our countries haven't managed to do in decades of peace. And how did they achieve that? I think there are three main reasons. It's the what, it's the who, and it's the political, I would say, support for these changes. The what has been explained before. They have recycled a lot of great e-government solutions from other parts of Europe. When it comes to the who, and this is probably the most important part, most governments lack the capacity to implement sophisticated GovTech solutions. And what these guys did, or more specifically, what President Zelensky did, he said, you know what, I'm gonna bring in for the position of minister and his folks around the most digitized startuppers of this country. So he brought in creme de la creme of the Ukrainian tech ecosystem to basically run digital transformation under his campaign slogan, State in a Smartphone. He brought in Mikhailo, he brought in Yegor, Valeria, and many other champions of GovTech globally, not just here in Europe. And the third thing that I mentioned is, will you be allowed to make those changes? And for this, you need the support from your prime minister. There needs to be an understanding at the highest political level that changes are absolutely necessary and that we are willing to take risks and also fail sometimes. Sometimes some things won't work. But so what? C'est la vie. And you need to have a boss that's understanding of this kind of experimentation, try and error process. And this is, I think, something that President Zelensky excels at in so many ways. Now, Europe might not be great at all kinds of technologies, but we can proudly say that GovTech is one of the areas where we're absolutely global leaders. That doesn't mean that every country in Europe is doing everything right. It means that every country in Europe is doing at least something right. Perhaps Estonia is doing 2 things right. But together, I think we have this enormous, I would say, product line of fantastic government apps, of fantastic interoperability platforms, of fantastic digitized healthcare systems, and so on and so forth. Now, one thing is to learn from each other and make sure that a couple of years down the road, thanks to this initiative right here, all countries will be great at everything. But the second thing that I think is important is how do we promote and export these solutions so that they can benefit everyone around us. And I'm not talking just about Europe, I'm talking about the rest of the world, where this kind of solutions, this kind of digital recycling is the fastest way, not just to get, you know, a great user experience, but to deliver public services to millions of people in the simplest and cheapest possible way. And that's why I'm very proud to announce that we are just registering the GovTech Center of Excellence called Digitality, which will serve precisely this purpose. We aim to export the best GovTech solutions from Europe, including Ukraine, Estonia, and many other countries, to the developing world, to help them make this digital transformation much, much faster than otherwise. We're grateful to many partners that we have, including USAID and the Visa Foundations and others, that realize how important it is to share this kind of technologies and capacity across the world. So we are very excited about not just the registration part for digitality, but especially for, you know, hitting the road and getting things done in Africa, in Asia, also in Latin America. And I think there's plenty of room for collaboration, not just with the Lisbon Council, which has been so supportive and so proactive in this area, but also with many of you. We are welcoming your not just support, but also suggestions, advice, and also active participation in what we do. And you'll be hearing more from us very, very soon. So thank you so much again, David, and thanks everyone for your support.
Thank you so much. And actually, you pointed to something that I just realized, that in fact, this meeting here today and the dinner that we had yesterday is our collaboration were basically so far bilateral. And we, as coordinator of GovTech for All, we have this role, so we interacted with the commissioner, with new players coming in. And now what we managed to do and what we are doing now is really creating a network, and hopefully to benefit from network economy so that we grow much faster and have everyone collaborate with everyone. And having said that, I would like to open the floor for questions. But before, I have we are starting this Reuser Award now. So I want to ask which public administration, who in the room has reused a solution by another government entity, developed by another government or a startup? Please raise your hand. Excellent. So next year it must be double. Anyway, any questions? I know some of you wanted to ask. We have all the user centricity partner. We have the City of Madrid, who is actually partner of both GovTech for All and user centricities. Any question? I have a question before we go ahead, a very quick one, and it's a bit provocative. Is recruiting people from the private sector a must?
Yes.
Amen.
Well, you said.
But just to add to that, to make that sustainable, it's got to go both ways. Public sector people have to go work in the private sector, go back and forth. It's not really a digital thing. It's a civil service sort of structuring how things work type of thing. I spent most of my life as a civil servant, but was gone for a while, and boy, does that make me look at things differently.
So I think one thing is also super important. How do we supercharge our public service? How do we build capacity internally? Because you can bring in teams from the private sector, but they come and go, as governments do. You have to have the core of the public service that's super digitized, that has the knowledge and the know-how to implement complex GovTech solutions. You mentioned that governments are good at procuring tech solutions. I don't think they are. Oftentimes, on the other side, they have companies that are super well-funded, that know what they do, that can afford the best lawyers, and many public servants simply aren't matched to them when they're negotiating huge procurement contracts that are going to define digital transformation for years to come. So I think there's a big need to build this capacity internally. And I'm not just talking about GovTech, I'm also talking about cybersecurity. Cybersecurity experts are in incredibly high demand, and there are many companies that can't afford them, let alone governments. So how do we make the salary systems, at least for this kind of deficitary professions, much, much more attractive for these people is key. We've seen some developments in several countries. There have been some exceptions made in the public sector systems to accommodate for higher salaries and different kind of packages for these people. But of course, you can never match the private sector. But in the end, and this was also my experience as a minister, there's no greater privilege than to serve your country.
I mean, just to go, yes, go back to that. Yes, when I say private people from the private sector, I would reframe that in the sense that it's more about having a civil servant system for this digital much more open. That's first. Second, working with those digital capacity, not just with the IT team. What you need is digital capacities for the government, the different areas, mobility, and so on. The ones that are rethinking and defining and designing the services. So you need that capabilities as well. But yes, what I think is that you need other kind of civil servant system for this digital. I don't know other things, but digital for sure. And the other thing, you need more people. Because what we are seeing here is that, I know some institutions here from Spain, they are doing amazing things with few people. And that has to change. And since it seems that it's like bad having more people, like more civil servants in the team, because it's like growing the mass of the public, whatever thing, what I see is that they are trying to do many, many things, and they have to, and they don't have to, even the resources. So yes, I think that there is something to change there.
Yeah, same for me. I think public sector should do some experience in private sector and vice versa. And within public sector, we should do some experience in each our countries also. We try to be much more citizen-centric, yeah? The only way to be more citizen-centric is to better understand what the needs are of that person you make a service for. We do a lot of, we try to do much more co-creation with citizens. That's already a good step. But sometimes I'm so struck by the fact that the services we've built so far, who are built by civil servants for citizens, these civil servants are citizens. And why is it so difficult for them to put themselves in the place of a citizen and to build something that is citizen-centric? Up to now, we've struggled with that. It's strange to not be citizen-centric, being yourself a citizen.
Luukas, you have some final remarks? Because we are wrapping up here, so.
We've got questions.
Oh, Ricardo.
Hi, my name is Ricardo Marvão. I'm from BTI, Portugal. First of all, congratulations for the discussion, very insightful. One of the things that we really were discussing yesterday and today also, communication is key. Understanding how to communicate all these services and that it reaches most people in the countries. But, and by the way, congratulations to Estonia for many years. You've been the champion communicating. Ukraine, we saw the presentation here is amazing. But we also see that some countries in Europe, or a lot of countries in Europe, also feel like with lower salaries and how you spend that money, because communication is expensive, especially if you want to do it in a proper way. How do these countries actually position the communication spending in a way that you don't have in the newspapers or in the news on TV saying, oh, why is this ministry spending so much money on communication when the hospital or the salaries or X, Y, and Z are actually not working in the country? Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm looking for that silver bullet on how you do that, but you're absolutely right. I mean, one of the key functions of government services is a marketing function. Communications is a two-way street. It's not just getting the message out. It's bringing your users into your product development. Again, the way that any bank, telco, or grocery store does today. So think of it this way. If you're going to hire a really good chief marketing officer, the first job they have is to market their existence. If they can do that, then they can go off and start working on the products.
Anyone wants to reply to this? I think Frank is.
Yeah, I have a marketing background, so for me it's so obvious. Every ministry should have a marketing director. We seems to be very good in technical things, in legal things, but we are not good in the go-to market, let's say. Yeah, packaging a service the way it should be, targeting the right target group, and tailoring your service to that target group. That includes a lot of communication, a lot of dissemination, a lot of education. And I think we underspent that part. It makes no sense to invest in technology if you don't explain to your citizen that it exists, that he understands how to install it, what it can do for him, etc. Because then he will not, if he doesn't know, he will not install, he will not use it, and for sure not trust it. So it goes together.
Thank you. I think the technology needs to be so good that it needs no explaining. You know, if you have a solution that's working so well that it gets, at first a smaller pickup, but then the word of mouth spread, and in the end you have everyone using it, so be it. And in many cases that's true. I agree with you that in many other cases you need good communication, but I think nothing can really compensate for a lack of a charismatic digital leader that sits in the government, the like we see here with Luukas or Mikhailo or many others across Europe. They are the best explainers of technology. They're the best motivators to convince people to use this kind of stuff. And my first boss at Uber taught me that repetition never spoils the prayer. And when I was a digital minister, I kept repeating the same stuff. But in the end, at least some of it stuck. And in the end, I would say, we had a wonderful conversation yesterday about fake news and disinformation and misinformation. The best cure against it is constant and credible government communication. President Zelensky has daily addresses to the Ukrainian people, daily, not weekly, not monthly, daily addresses that are not painting fairy tales in the clouds, but are realistic and credible. And this kind of communication in the end, I think, is the most impactful, much more than all the marketing agencies of this world, and I work with many of them.
Thank you. We are running to the end. Idoia, do you want to say a few words to close, since you didn't have a second round?
Thank you so much for this experience of these 2 days in Brussels. It has been amazing, and it's just the beginning of all this. Yeah. No, just to say that, again, GovTech, I think that's an opportunity, but just to think that it's not easy, and there are 2 key issues here to work in. I mean, first, in the capabilities. I mean, you need to have a strong digital teams to be able to integrate all those solutions that are already in the market and open in the market. I mean, that are 2 things that I think that are super aligned with the European agenda, so we have to work on it.
Thanks a lot, and let me thank the speakers and for the great discussion, and we'll move on to the next panel. So thank you.